This week on the podcast, we're joined by Thurston Hillman, the managing creative director for StarFinder, and we talk about StarFinder a ton today. And what the hell is going on with GameStop? All of that and more in this week's episode of the podcast. Roll the intro. Not bad.
But
It was a lot more lively than last week.
yeah, I'm amped.
Hello and welcome to Next to Nothing, a podcast for gamers on a budget. I'm your host, Danny K. With me, as always, the wonderful, the beautiful, the Mr. Green Elite Green. How are you doing today?
I can't complain. I can complain a little bit, but I can't complain. I'm here. I'm alive. I'm thriving-ish. How you doing, Danny?
You know, I'm not doing too bad myself. I mean, I have like some minor complaints, but they're not for here. They're not for here. We're also joined by the spooky and the oogly, the Mendacii. Mendacii, how are you today?
Oh, not too shabby, man. On the spooky side of things, I went through and listened to every single episode of Voice from Darkness today. So if you like Twilight Zone, or like you miss Coast to Coast, or you liked the game Control, I highly recommend it. Super duper good. Otherwise, I'm super amped to be with the guy that's on my right side on this overlay.
Yes, our special guest this week, Thursty Hillman. Thurston,
Hello.
For the folks who have not had the privilege and pleasure of meeting you, who are you? What do you do? And just go on ahead and plug yourself.
Oh, okay. Hi, my name's Thurston Hillman, or Thursty, or on-call GM. I, as you said, am the recently appointed, last week appointed, managing creative director for the StarFinder role-playing game, which is a tabletop role-playing game that is in the science fantasy genre, kind of a sister game to Pathfinder, which you may or may not have heard of. Beyond that, I write in the role-playing game sphere, so I've been involved with role-playing games for like over 10 years now in various capacities as like a freelance author working for companies including Paizo Publishing, who I currently work with, and then a bunch of others, including like doing freelance work for like companies like Cubicle 7 that do like some of the Warhammer RPG stuff. And then on the side of that, because I don't have enough going on in my life, I GM for a show called Narrative Declaration. You can find that over at narrativedeclaration.com. We do a bi-weekly TTRPG stream called Rock Grind, which is kind of like a Dark Souls-esque inspired campaign with a bunch of shitlord players that I love and adore. This is me in a nutshell. I'm glad to be here on this here Men with Fine Beards podcast, and I look forward to this good discussion.
I don't have a beard.
Close enough.
It's just fuzz. But thanks for the confidence boost. I really needed that today.
There you go.
I'm not crying. You're crying.
I'm not crying either.
We're both crying.
Proud Men with Beards podcast. Yes, I'm excited to be here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Just a quick note, because I am watching the upload speed, guys. I do know that the stream is probably going to crap out at certain points tonight. You guys can watch this in completion without any sort of technical issues on YouTube and listen on Spotify. And if you are already consuming the show on those platforms, you can find us live, usually every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central Time on twitch.tv/DannyK. We also have a question of the week. This week, our question is, what's your favorite sci-fi setting? Thirsty, I'm going to put you on the spot. What's your favorite sci-fi setting?
I'm contractually obligated now to say Starfinder, but I also really like Warhammer. Like, Warhammer's also my jam. I'm not going to lie. Like, there's like something like 60 Horus Heresy books, and I've read each and every one of them. So, like, without like the shill of the company I work for, which is Starfinder, and you should go, check out the Starfinder setting. I'm a Warhammer stan.
Excellent. Mendacii, how about you?
Man, I really want to say Warhammer, but I have so many fond memories with Mass Effect and just being a multitude of different Commander Shepards and dancing awkwardly on the Citadel and hitting on everything that isn't a human. Um, yeah, I'd have to go with Mass Effect.
Okay. Okay. Green.
I've been really digging space stuff lately. Like in terms of like movie content, I would definitely say like the Predator franchise. Uh, now that Prey is out, I've always digged that like aesthetic of like an alien that is like a hunter that is like coming down and like essentially wrecking house, and then like they expanded on that whole entire like uh science like sci-fi alien premise as the franchise has gone on. Some good, some bad. But yeah, like for games, definitely like space. That space aesthetic has been really hitting me hard lately, especially with Star Citizen. So yeah, something like that.
You surprised me because I was like looking at your T-shirt the whole time, and I'm like, "All right, here we go, here we go."
I am a slut for Star Wars. Okay,
Okay, very good, very good,
We're not
very
gonna be
good.
that kind of person right now. I fucking love Star Wars.
Good, good.
Does Fallout count as sci-fi?
I would assume.
Because that's.
Eh, eh.
I mean, it's got
Maybe.
robots. Canonically, it has aliens. There's
Yeah.
mutants.
Thirsty,
I'd say you're
would you
reaching.
call,
I'd say you're reaching.
yeah, would you call Shadowrun sci-fi?
Like there's like a whole cyberpunky genre, but there's also
Right.
like post-apocalyptic genre. Like I don't know, genres are all constructs, anyways, that we make up in our minds.
Well,
My favorite sci-fi is actually going to now be Pathfinder. I don't know.
well, if Fallout counts, Fallout would be my favorite setting. If it doesn't, I'm gonna say Gundam.
Okay.
Like the
Is there a specific flavor of Gundam?
the what is it? The Universal Century? Is that what it's called?
Okay, okay.
Yeah, with the
Not Iron-Blooded Orphans, where you just feel like awful about life through the entire show, and is my favorite. But
that is my favorite Gundam.
Yeah,
That is
he every time Gundam comes up, he always says Iron-Blooded Orphans. I always say Attack on Titan because they're the same thing.
they
Oh, damn.
they are not. And
Flash
don't you-
Gundam.
No.
Flash Gundam.
That is a
Damn.
disgusting term. Knock
Hate
it
me.
off.
Oh, I don't have the ability to kick you from this call. That was a smart idea.
Tell me I'm wrong.
You're
I'm not
wrong.
wrong.
No.
It
I
is
see-
literally Gundam, a Gundam story, just flesh Gundams. Okay, it's the same.
That's a horrifying way to describe it. Excellent.
It
You're welcome.
makes
You'll have nightmares for the rest of the week.
it makes me want to
Yeah,
retch
yeah.
every time he says
Ugh.
it.
Ugh.
Anyways, that's our question of the week. Let us know what you guys think in the live chat. You can also let us know in the YouTube comments and, of course, on Twitter. Green, how can they reach us on Twitter?
You can always check out at Next to Nothing PC on Twitter, and then also we have Facebook. And Facebook is Next to Nothing the podcast. It's a page. Check it out.
Yeah. I
The
think
page.
I think we've buried the lead long enough. I'm gonna basically just give the wheel over to Mendacii here, and let's just talk Starfinder.
I would
Is he-
so
he-
love to.
He has been fangirling for 2 weeks now. Okay.
Oh,
hardcore.
You gotta let him take this.
He's been giddy.
Yeah, it all started when I sent Thursty an email, and I was like, "Yeah, it's shot in the dark. This guy's busy as hell, but you know, whatever. We'll see." And look at him. There he is, and he's all smiley. What do you know? Thirsty, you have over 45 writing credits and over a dozen that I've stolen from. A painful and torturous yet loving GM, and someone I try to emulate or channel at least like a little bit every time I sit down and run a game. You've GM'd Warhammer, Warhammer 40k, Pathfinder 1st Edition, 2nd Edition, StarFinder, and likely many, many more TTRPGs, and I have questions for you. Are you ready?
Okay, yes, but the most important game you didn't mention there is
Mm.
Dread. Now, the
Ooh.
Dread role-playing game is by
Ooh.
far the best role-playing game ever made. And if you're listening to this show, you need to go out and buy the Dread rulebook. And if you're not familiar with what Dread is, all I'm just gonna say is that it's a Jenga-based role-playing game that doesn't use dice. That's what you need in
Question.
your life. Yeah.
I'm a novice, not even a novice. I would say a newbie to tabletop RPG.
Mhm.
Are you like Dread as in like Judge Dredd?
Okay, no. This is Dread as in like
G
terror-esque.
DREAD. Okay.
Yes, and
Alright.
it is a game that is meant to emulate. And this is like I'm gonna start. I'm not even letting him ask the question. I'm just jumping in with a sales pitch for a completely different game, but because I think it's amazing, and anyone who's interested in tabletop RPGs really needs to check out Dread because it's a role-playing game that is played with a group of friends. It's great to introduce your friends to like the concept of role-playing. It's meant to emulate like a slasher horror film, and it's done using a Jenga tower.
You know,
And
I
so there,
love slashers, so
and the way it works, I can explain the game in like 2 minutes. It's great. It's legit. Just you have a storyteller, your typical game master, dungeon master style role, and he's narrating the slasher storyline that's going on, and all of the players are playing their characters. And anytime a player wants to do something, they're like, okay, I want to do this. And the storyteller's like, okay, there's a chance of failure here. So you need to make a pull from the tower. And the way the game works is if they make their pull and they succeed and the tower doesn't fall, action's good. They're good to go. If they pull and the tower falls, their action fails and they die a terrible death.
that's
They can
really
also
rad.
choose. They can also choose to like be like, I'm not making a pull. Tower looks too rickety. Their action fails, but their character lives. Now, the thing that makes this game is the fourth option, and this is where you get like your absolute role players out of it. I decide not to. I decide I'm not going to pull. Instead, I intentionally smash the tower. At that point, your action succeeds, but your character dies a terrible death. There, that's the whole role playing game. It's the greatest experience you'll ever have with friends. Telling you right now.
Sign me up.
Yep.
Danny, when are we doing this at your place?
Halloween.
Hell yeah. Hell
I
yeah.
will fly out. I
Uh,
won't be here for Halloween.
Yeah, well, we'll have to also get Quan in on it because Quan, I believe, has the whole rule book. Shout out to my longtime friend Quan. But Mendacii,
Yes.
back to you.
I do have questions for you, Thurston,
All right.
if you are ready.
All right. Now that I've plugged a different game, go ahead. Sure.
That was more my
absolutely.
fault. I am too new for this, so that is on me. Sorry. Take it away, Mendacii.
So, Thurston, when did you fall in love with sci-fi tabletop role-playing games?
Oh Lord. So I've ever since I was a wee child, I've like been involved with nerdy stuff. Got into D&D at a young age due to a family member. But the first nerdy game I ever got involved with was this little known game called BattleTech. And I was like young and thirsty. Like I was at like junior high at that point, if that even. And I met a friend through like Air Cadets at the time, and he was playing. This was like the most like stereotypical, like we play BattleTech Saturdays in the basement of the game store, the like non-AC basement of the game store, where I like went and I met some people and I started playing BattleTech, and like I was like really into it. And eventually then we were all like, why are we playing in the basement of a game store? Because there's another game store that opened that like lets you play in their game space and they have air conditioning. And then we went there and started playing this other game called Warhammer, and that just kind of got me really into like sci-fi and the concept of like fictional worlds outside of television. And so I was really big into it from that. Like I got Dark Heresy, which was the like 40K role playing game. I have like a Black Industries version of that book, which was like the first company that published it before it got like bought out by Fantasy Flight like a week later. Like I was a big fan of that, and that was kind of my like intro into just like science fantasy. On top of another game called Rifts, if you've ever heard, it's done by Palladium. it's sure a series of books. It also has, and I'm gonna like stab someone I know's in chat right now. Also has the fine Robotech and Macross 2 role-playing games, which are beautiful pieces of art. They're books that exist. But yeah, like I got into it at a young age. In fact, I recently had a little flood in my basement and was like, oh, I found all these old books I have, and yay! Don't worry, they were undamaged, but it was like a little memory lane. So I got into it from that really, and that kind of spurred on a love that then took me into some like more traditional fantasy stuff too, because D&D is popular, and I got into that, and then I got into Pathfinder through that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And uh, of all the games that you mentioned, I'm going to focus on Rifts, a game that's known for the library, or maybe even better put, the archives, the international archives of Rift books that there are. And all of the rule sets that you can use, you can choose to use. You could choose to simply run the game how you'd like with the core skeleton. But it seems that a lot of sci-fi tabletop role-playing games do seem to be bogged down quite a bit by a mess, a cacophony of rules, just screaming at you in every other situation. And of course, as you get to playing tabletop, you kind of make the decision that if it makes sense in the moment, I will look up the rule. But for now, it should do this, because otherwise, we're all just going to be staring at different paragraphs, trying to find the correct two sentences for this situation. Um, would you say that perhaps that might have a reason behind those that might be tentative in starting sci-fi TTRPGs, whether it's the space combat mixed in with the land combat mixed in with how do you run a ship, to how do you get to other galaxies, things like that. Certainly it takes a little bit more, or there are a couple more gears in place than just throw your rucksack in the cart and make your ox go woo and go to the next town.
Yeah, I think there's a few things to hit on there. When it comes to rules and just the overwhelming number of rules that can come, you're gonna always find like what game systems you want. There's a ton of game systems out there, as you mentioned. I'm a big fan of like Pathfinder, StarFinder, and started working for the company as a result, just because I like to have sort of a mechanical back end that like helps the players and like the game master storyteller like feel like there's an evolution going on. One thing that I struggle with a lot is more strictly narrative games. And there's nothing wrong with strictly narrative games. They're hilarious. They're super fun. But I'm like the type of person who, when I sit down to do a campaign, I'm like, I will plan this out for the next 80 sessions. And I like starting in episode 1, I have the end arc. And like, that's my type of approach. And so I like having mechanics that build towards that. And so for me, I look at mechanics like starship combat, and I sort of segment out my stories and go, okay, this is where we're going to learn about this. This is when we're going to learn about, the next set of rules. This is where we're going to introduce vehicles. And I think as like the person who's bringing the game, because I think in a lot of game groups how it tends to work is someone makes the plunge, decides to be the game master, and they're often the person who maybe knows the rules, knows the game, and is bringing other people in. Or maybe there's some people who've got like grok the game through other mediums. I think with like the prevalence of like virtual tabletops, shows like Critical Role, you're just seeing a lot more people who are coming into games with a bit of background already and knowing how they work. But my approach on how to handle that is identify what you want for your story beats, and then kind of break it in like to sessions. What I did when I ran a Dark Heresy campaign a couple of years ago for second edition, I went into it thinking I'm going to run a 12 episode like TV series style arc, and each episode for the first half or so I kind of just introduce concepts. Like first one, we're going to learn how skill checks work, and we're going to see how that system all plays out and do a bunch of different things. And then the second one, it's like combat, cool, we're going to learn how that roughly works. And then the third one, it was like, all right, now we're going to learn about things like Overwatch, which then led into let's learn how healing works because one of the players was about to die. Like you can kind of like stagger your rules. And I think a lot of people get overwhelmed by like the sheer volume of rules. Like this is the tiny core rule book, right? Like
Yep.
this is the pocket version, but it's still a lot of pages and there's a lot of stuff. But realistically, you're referencing this as a game master, as a player, only a few times once you've got those core mechanics in. And so it's just kind of like getting some repetition and focusing on the rules you're going to use a lot. And I think that's true of any game system out there. You just kind of want to focus, like start small, build out. You don't have to start with like, and I need to know how starships will get me across the galaxy and all these other things. Like, you kind of start small and build out.
Right, yeah, because as soon as you start telling people, like, so when it comes to making your ship, you can customize everything from your hull armor to your deck armor to the computers on board, and they all have modifiers, and they all cost different amounts, and they can all be made of different materials. Like,
I
yeah,
have never once had my players build their own ship.
yeah.
In as like a mechanical exercise. What I've done with them is I've basically presented like an in-game sort of like, and here's this like kooky NPC who's your ship like master. It's like, do you want fast engines or do you want to be slow but be tanky? Do you want one big gun, many gun? You know, that kind of thing. And then that sort of makes it into a role-playing element, because the players don't necessarily need to do that. Now, sometimes you might have a
Right.
group where they absolutely want to go and just be, oh my God, like, I want to design everything, and that's great, and you can hand it off to them. But I think the more work you can do as a game master just to make the players feel comfortable just with role playing, then you'll get people who kind of slide into the rules side.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely have the latter for all of my players in my in real life group. They want their hands on everything. They want to build everything. I have people that had they built a tavern on the outskirts of a town, and someone went into a 3D program and modeled it foot for foot.
Nice.
And then another person did a from the very basement up to the rooftop of basically just blueprints that you would have for like building a house. It's ridiculous and insane, but I love them for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what could you tell players that are either brand new to tabletop role playing games, or that play more, say, like mainstream games like Pathfinder, like D&D, um, to maybe try to woo them in a way to try out not just StarFinder, but sci-fi TTRPGs as a whole, especially if it's not like their bag. Because to me, StarFinder, there's so much Pathfinder in there that it's just like, hey man, let's throw some lasers on your character. Let's make it so you can have like palladium armor. And now, like, you don't just travel across the sea in like a creaky boat full of holes. You're literally going to new star systems. You're racing around Octurne. You know, you're like literally making deals with Kasatha people. It's insane. So I think for me, I'm like your easiest mark because I'm like, oh yeah, I can already see myself playing that. But for the folks that are just brand new or I don't really like sci-fi too much. What would you say to them?
I think one is with like Starfinder, we specifically brand ourselves as science fantasy in a way. So we veer more towards that kind of fantasy side of things. So there is that, like, I have a laser sword, I, cast magic. I like, you get that feeling. The biggest thing I would say about games like Starfinder, and honestly sci-fi games in general, is just the fact that you can just the fact that you can tell different stories. And this is the biggest thing. I think a lot of people get into sort of D&D, Pathfinder, those games, and it's like, all right, we go, we kill the dragon, we save the princess is in another tower, okay, we go do the next thing. Like, oh, now it's a lich, ooh, it's a vampire, spoopy. We go through the mega dungeon, okay, cool. And like, that's not to say those are the only stories, but like,
Right.
there is like an assumed level of tropes. Now, one thing that is interesting, I would say, about like a science fiction, science fantasy setting is the ability to do just off the cuff stuff you can't do in your traditional fantasy games that bring a whole different type of role playing experience. One of the scenarios we have was for Starfinder Society was one called like Live Exploration Extreme, which was, it's a bunch of Starfinders who were going into this like space dungeon thing, but they have an undead reality TV crew with them. And so, like, imagine, like, okay, we're going into like a dungeon, like, all right, kick open the door, kill the goblins inside. All right, now what we're gonna do is wait, time out. You're coming into the booth. We need to talk to you. And I've run this thing at conventions, and it's absolutely a ball because, like, then you sit down a player and you're like, all right, what do you tell the camera? And the player's like, well, the fighter isn't pulling their weight. That's obvious. Like, they need to step up a bit more. Why is the wizard tanking? And like, you just get these entirely different dynamics that, like, and setups that you don't necessarily get in your traditional fantasy, because like, things like the internet or infospheres or whatnot exist.
Mhm.
Like, starship combat can be such a different thing. There's just these added layers that I think spice it up and are just like a different flavor. Like, some people, really like their barbecue food. Some people want some Italian food. Some people want sushi. Like, the different flavors of games is really going to depend on what you're looking for.
Absolutely. And you, like myself, we aren't picky. We'll take literally all of that, and we're not going to say no to having all of it at the same time either. And that's
Mhm.
kind of been, that's going to be my segue into my next question for you. Something that has been sort of a point of contention in the TTRPG social space for years is the lack of diversity of games being played at tables. Sometimes people will even go as far as, say, shoving an entire new game into the mechanics of what they're already familiar with just so that they don't have to learn something new. There's a certain type of frustration that draws from people that already enjoy a game that does literally all the things that they're looking to do. I'm one of those people. I'm exceptionally guilty of this. I've been primarily playing Pathfinder First Edition for 13 years, after playing 3.5 for 2 years before that. I've run a few other games like Coriolis, Morkborg, um, Shadowrun, and like a couple other things like that. But the amount that I've done that is pretty sparse. And so there came a day where I got a wild hair up my ass and I had said, I want to play a sci-fi role-playing game, but I know my players love Pathfinder. So, of course, I did the logical thing, and instead of looking at Starfinder and picking it up and just being like, all right, guys, it's that, but it's space. No, I made my entire new game based on the skeleton of Pathfinder called Death by Proxy, which takes place in not a post-apocalyptic world, but actually essentially like Neo-New Earth, in which like different countries have either melded together or gone obliterated off the face of the planet and so on and so forth. And it brings in this whole Deus Ex vibe in which you have your completely unmodified humans, your modified humans with crappy modifiers, people that are just full-on cyborgs or just androids, and then your animalistic looking androids, so like non bipedal. And I went through, I did all of the work for how combat would work, how gearing up your character would work. Let's see here. I redid all of the weapon classes, all the situational modifiers. I did everything from how land vehicles and air vehicles would work. And yeah, I didn't once touch a Starfinder book, and instead just did way more than what anyone ever should do just to enjoy a game. But at the end of the day, after many sleepless nights and probably some really terrible GM tooling, I made something that vaguely looked like a sci-fi tabletop game using all of the everything from Pathfinder. And you know, it worked kinda. We did do a few sessions. They did do a story arc, and it wasn't terrible.
Yeah.
So yeah, uh that's kind of like my personal take on this is like, if you've ever wanted something different as far as an experience goes, there's something out there, and I promise it's something that would definitely pique your interest, scratch your itch, and I'm definitely happy to report that since then I've dabbled with some other systems. I was mentioning Coriolis, which is not a D20 system. It is a whole bunch of D6 and a lot of really cool stuff. And you learn so much more about games, about tabletop role playing when you do play these other systems. And even hermits like me that don't even move on to the second edition of the game that they love so much uh, can find something that they will enjoy. Um, as far as that goes, I don't think that I will be, sending you any of my masterwork here that I have from my notebook of when I was 20. So somehow I also believe that you'll be just fine without it.
I can't. I legally can't. That's actually it's a fun, not a fun thing. I should asterisk that. It's a weird thing about my job. I actually, I can't take unsolicited manuscripts. That's for legal defense purposes. But that being said, I mean, I'm just as guilty. Like I've done tons of game systems where I'm just like, oh, I like this, but I want to tweak it. I want to do like, spoiler alert, the StarFinder games I run, I'm like, I think this decision was dumb. I'm changing it. Like this class ability works that way. Nah, that ain't gonna work for my game. Blah, change it. And I think more people just need to adjust these games to suit what they need and what their players want and what their players are looking for. I come from like a long line of looking at an edition change or a game change and going, not me, never. I was a person who was like, D&D 3rd edition, that sounds scary. I'm sticking with my 2nd edition book. That lasted about a month until I saw how pretty the new books were.
Oh yeah.
But like, you know what? I also understand some people are involved in very long campaigns. They are, they've got gaming groups that they've been going with for years. One thing I always say, especially when like new editions of games come out too, is like, it's not like the company is going to kick down your door and come take your books. Like, I still have an entire wall of Pathfinder first edition books that I still reference regularly, even though the rules system is not the same rules system as what we have now. Similarly, like I play Pathfinder 2nd edition because I really, really enjoy it. And there's some key things that I think, I would love to incorporate more into a StarFinder game that I run because they're iterative editions. But I also know there's other role-playing games that I love. I shilled it right at the beginning. And I, like as Greenbright, I love Dread. I think Dread was like this perfect, like encapsulated game for what it does. And sometimes you just got to look at your party, like your party, your players, your group, and find out like what do they want, what do they need. And like I hope you give Starfinder a try, and that's like the thing that keeps me fed, and I like that. but also like people play what they want to play, and I'm a firm believer in like game companies live and die based off of the quality and the passion of what they put out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's kind of the big thing too is if you don't or are not willing to try something new, you'll never find something new to love. And it's been this thing. Like I just have felt like this crotchety old man living in a cave, and I'm like, no, we only play first edition here. And like, anytime someone, asks like, hey, did you see this new Gods of the Inner Sea book that Pathfinder Second Edition put out? I'm like, the art's really neat, but meh. And like, I'll steal from it. I'll take all the boons and curses and things from it and throw it in first edition. But
Have you done 3-action economy? Blah!
yes, that's just it though, is listening to Rot Grind is what has cemented me being like, after this campaign's done, guys, I have the next thing like written up and it's going to be a homebrew world again, but I really want to move to second edition. I'd already been fudging the entire first edition action economy where I said, if something says it's a move action, fuck that. Don't even pay attention to it. It's all just standard actions And in standard actions, you can move or you can attack, or you just use everything to full round attack or full round action. You still have your swift, your immediates, and your attacks of opportunity and all that junk. But the thing is that there are so many different things. There are so many different things that Pathfinder has built on and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe 12 years since it was originally published.
Oh, it's
That
it's it's even a bit higher now, I think. Yeah, it's
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if it was. I can't remember if it was
I think Paizo's just
08.
like I think Paizo's like 20 now. So yeah, it's
Yeah, yeah, and like there's still classes that came out in like 2016, 2017, like the Omdura and things like that. And I'm like, I can't keep learning all of these hybrid classes. Holy shit, these are cool. And I've never thought about taking a cleric and a sorcerer and just mashing them together
yeah.
and saying like that's a new thing. Um, like multi-classing is a big thing in Pathfinder and in Pathfinder Second Edition, but so much of that has been I think that at first I looked at it as it had been watered down or whittled down. And every time I would bring the idea up to my players, just test the waters, they're like, Pathfinder First Edition has so many options. But the thing is that you will never touch 80% of them because there is so much. Like, we can only touch so much on a 4-hour session every week, and that's more than a lot of people get. But yeah, I mean, like when it comes to something big like the action economy, that already speeds things up. And the gameplay in Rock Grind is really what got me. Combat can still take an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it is, but it doesn't feel like it. It also just kind of moves quicker to the point where if someone misses, if someone messes up, something like that, they fail a save, um, it comes back to them fairly quickly. There's a lot more legibility in the things that you can do as a player and the things that are marked as just, hey, these are actions. This is one action. This is two
Mhm.
actions. Things like that. Instead of being like, hey, did you know that potion is a move action? It provokes an attack of opportunity unless you have this swift drinker feat, unless you can't really get that unless you're an alchemist, but you could definitely dabble and you might even be able to get a rogue talent and get an inquisitor talent after that and then maybe grab that. But yeah, it's like there's so many winding paths and these very crooked roadmaps that are just burned into my head from so many years of playing this. And I'm like, wouldn't it be so much better if things just were and things just was? Like, wouldn't that
I
be
think a
great?
lot of that just comes from being able to see games in a public fashion.
Hmm.
Like for example, I don't think a game like Pathfinder Second Edition or even the current like edition of D&D would have nearly as much traction if it weren't for things like streamed games. And I'm a big proponent that like streamed games, like things like Critical Role, even what we're doing on Narrative Declaration, are so important right now. Uh, if only because people get to see tabletop RPGs, and we have a whole new generation that's coming in from like them TikTok kids and all that other stuff, where they're coming on in and they're wanting to like ingest short content, but they're also then finding something like Critical Role that has however many hundred episodes, and they're just consuming it, and seeing gameplay through that helps people learn. It's like I've seen a lot with board games. Back in my day, if you wanted to play a board game with a friend, you would go to their house, like you and whatever friends, you'd sit around the table, you'd pull out the rules, someone would read it, one person might pay attention, you'd start playing it, it would be a shit show. And then finally, what would probably end up happening is like you'd kind of fudge your way through it and then be like, oh, we'll get better next time, next time. Nowadays, you have people who are like coming and having like board game parties. They sit down and, all right, we're going to load up the YouTube video and we're going to watch a video that explains how this game works. And like that's part of the process. And like we're seeing more of this digital age that's getting people involved in games. And to me, that's really exciting. It like showing off things like how Pathfinder 2's action economy works. Really exciting. For Starfinder, I know a lot of people are like, oh gosh, Starship Combat's so complicated. If I sit down with like a VTT table and show it off, it's one of like the smoothest things I can run. In
Hmm.
fact, it's usually smoother than regular combat. So I think it's just like getting the ability to show stuff. And one thing I've learned from just playing tabletops, and this is probably true for anyone listening, but experiencing how other GMs and how other tables play is a huge eye opener. I know the first time I went to a Gen Con, I saw some things from other GMs that I was like, whoa, that is incredibly cool how you handle that. And I incorporate it into my game. And then I do that with like watching streams and stuff too. I think it's kind of that iterative process where you're absorbing from everywhere. So yeah.
Yeah,
I do have
that's
to say, if I could cut in,
absolutely, yeah.
one thing that I have to genuinely and wholeheartedly thank COVID for was I feel like COVID has really pushed that narrative of people wanting to get back together and actually play like tabletop games in person, because that whole spread of time where everyone was essentially self isolating and keeping apart, and then it's kind of pushed this like this this paradigm shift back to, hey, we want to get back together, let's play some board games, or let's play some D&D, or
Yeah.
Pathfinder, stuff like that. And that's huge, I think, especially for the industry.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think it's also kind of the reverse is true too. And I don't mean like, haha, you're wrong. I actually mean like we're seeing people come back, and we're seeing people who are like, oh heck yeah, like I get to game at my like I was saying before the show, like Fridays are my Warhammer game. I get to go back to my friendly local GameStop, we'll get there later, a game store, and play Warhammer with my buds. And like prior to COVID, we had like 15-20 people sometimes coming out to our game stores, sitting around. Like most of them weren't even playing, they were just coming because of the social thing. We'd go out for wings and beer after. We're kind of getting back to that, and for me that's just like such a nice social event to that sense of normalcy and everything else. But what we're also seeing, like from my professional end, is we're seeing people who have made these like online game groups. And I can say I worked in organized play prior to Starfinder, and that's sort of like Paizo's organized play program is very much about like game groups meeting in game stores, building up like little communities there, and big communities, to be honest. But one of the things that was really kind of dicey prior to COVID was the online community and how it was treated. Because like, we had to make sure that people who were going to conventions got like special treats and special boons and special little widgets to incentivize people going to conventions. But then you had our online community that was really like growing and big, and they're like, do we get anything? And it's like, well, no, because anyone can go to your event. And it was kind of this weird policy that existed. And then COVID happened, and surprise, surprise, our online community became like the most important thing for tabletop at that point. And in fact, like I think tabletop weathered COVID a lot better than many other industries. It certainly was not unscathed, but I think in many ways, like people were willing to buy role playing games. They could game online. And I think we're seeing an extension of that now too, where people are still gaming online. Like they've made these game groups that have lasted a year or 2 years. And like I even know I'm like, I kind of want to, I have a game group that is coming like back to my house, and we've started gaming here, but I'm like, I might just keep the VTT side going. That was really useful. Like it's nice when someone else is doing the math for me, but we still get that experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's just been phenomenal for this hobby. I've kind of always said like no matter what game you're playing, if it's on a tabletop setting, like it's the best game in the world, man. It brings everyone together. It makes them interact with each other in a way that we don't usually get to. And whether you're doing that in person or whether you're online, that sort of connectiveness, that sort of togetherness, the fact that everyone is coming together to tell an entire story, and they all get a part in that. There's something really truly beautiful in it versus like, video games. You have a start, you have an end. Some of them have options like say Mass Effect that I had mentioned at the top of the show. But the thing is that there's not a lot of things that actually change the outcome. Like spoiler alert, Shepard always dies at the end. Sorry, doesn't matter what color you choose, red, green, or blue. the bad thing's going to happen. You're going to have to say goodbye to everybody, so on and so forth. But a
Escape from
tabletop game,
Tarkov will always end your friendships. Like it's
exactly.
known. It's known.
Exactly. Yeah. And meanwhile, like in any tabletop game, no matter what system you're playing, what the GM thinks is going to be the end is usually not that, because you end up being surprised by your players, whether it's because of the choices that they make, the outcome that they reach, or the fact that they all got schedules that could never match again, and you guys just never finish where you left off.
Too real. Too real.
Yep. Oops. Oops.
Ooh, too real.
Why must you
Yikes.
hurt me?
Yeah. Touch the open nerve
oh,
on that one.
ugh.
But yeah, so with that all being said, Thurston, I have one final question for you, and it's a bit
right.
long.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Yes.
Go for it.
So take a note, maybe get a pencil, maybe a
Okay.
notepad. All right.
Yep.
So with this latest release of just massive amounts of player choices, adventures, and more with last week's Gen Con, what are 3 of your favorite new additions to this edition of StarFinder? Now, this is also typically where someone would ask, is now a good time for people to hop into StarFinder? Where the obvious answer is yes, anytime is a good time to try it out. And we've laid for you before this so many reasons as to why you should. A more beneficial question for our listeners being that we are a gaming podcast for people in the hobby trying to do so without breaking the bank. And TTRPGs are known for sometimes being quite cost prohibitive. So I'd like to ask you, Thursty, when someone is looking to gear up and shoot across the cosmos, what source books and or companion books would you recommend they get? Or is there a preferred method you would recommend for someone to try out StarFinder? Something like playing online with Roll20 or some other sort of virtual tabletop?
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna cheat with my first answer here,
Yes.
because it's not a source book, but it's kind of a source book. This is the pocket edition of the core rule book. It's tiny. It's a tiny book. You can bring it with you anywhere. It's the whole core rule book in small form. I say that this is quite honestly like the best buy you can make, whether you're a GM or a player. I think that one of the things Paizo has done is we've gone from the like big tomes down to something that is like small handheld. You can bring it to the bathroom with you, whatever. That is like the quintessential easy access of the core rules. And I think, if you ever want to play a game, getting in with the core rules is really good. I can probably go on about I can go on about like, oh, and you want to start with the beginner box and those work for some people, and if you've got like young kids, that might be the way. I personally believe the best way to get into our game is to buy that pocket edition book, and then right now, like we talk about, haha, is this like the best time? Of course it is. This time's exciting right now just because we're doing something new with Starfinder. We're doing an event called the Drift Crisis, which is like this year-long meta event that is happening in our setting. So like imagine a tabletop RPG that like you can do anything with, but then the company has provided you with this meta event that you can slot in to make work for your game. And that book to me is really exciting because it gives game masters who might be getting in like this idea of, oh, hey, I can like get involved with this event that's happening right now and feel like you're part of something bigger, get involved in the community that way. But also it kind of gives them like the creative ideas that they might not have when they're getting into a game, or might not even like think about, because a lot of the books that come out for tabletop role-playing games are all about like, oh, and here's this place and here's this thing that's going on. Drift Crisis is an event, and I think giving people an event that they can sort of latch onto parts of, like whether it be, oh, I'm doing the space Titanic, or oh, I'm was on a ship in hyperspace and I ended up crashing into hell, which is literally an adventure path we're doing. Giving GMs those tools, that's like the second thing tier. So you get your core rules, you get your event that you want to be part of. And realistically, if you're looking to play and we're talking about like tools, it all depends on what your group is. Because if you have people who, as we were talking about before, like, well, yeah, Gundams and not flesh Gundams, but real Gundams, like I would suggest a book like Tech Revolution. One of the things we talked about at Gen Con recently is that we teased our next adventure path that's going to be a mech AP. Like, we're gonna do a full adventure path that's gonna be mechs, and like you're gonna do mech stuff. So that's pretty cool. So if you've got like a group that wants to do mechs in space, heck yeah, that. If you've got someone who wants to do more starship, like this is where I think, going back to the prior point of like option paralysis for role playing games, it shouldn't be viewed as option paralysis. It should be viewed as, okay, I'm at the buffet. What are the things I like most? You know, and you get those things, and so we're providing them. So there are a lot of neat source books. But the other one that I would strongly specifically recommend, I should say, I can go into like a long list of like, oh, and you need this to do this type of thing, but I would say the other thing you would want if you're getting into it, and I strongly recommend this, even with the most creative game masters or storytellers, buy an adventure that's pre-written. Buy an adventure path that's pre-written. Paizo kind of specializes in adventure paths, where we release like anywhere from one to 3 to 6 volumes of an adventure, and they're pre-written. And the reason I say, you know, even if you're a super creative who wants to make your own stuff, I say go with the adventure paths, because it's always interesting to learn how other people structure stuff, and running those sorts of things. Between that, the rule book, and one of your event books, you've kind of got all the building blocks that you need to play the game. And like yeah, there is no wrong time to play a role-playing game. I mean, maybe like right before an edition change is kind of one of those wibbly wobbly times, but even then, you might get some of the coolest content. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate all of that, man, and every answer. Uh, yeah, just the absolute tabletop scholar, Thurston. Wow. Thank you very much for one thing, coming onto the show, answering an email from some deranged, rabid dog man like myself, and you know, just a lover and sealer of all of your work. It's been phenomenal. But I think, unless anyone else has any questions for Thurston regarding StarFinder or tabletop role-playing games.
I don't know. He
No.
covered everything I needed to hear.
It
You're
was
gonna play Dread now.
Absolutely.
Sweet.
Yeah, that was a bit
Perfect.
like drinking it from the water hose. I might actually have to go back and like re-listen to this to like to get the bits that I missed. This might be one where people are like rewinding every so often. Wait, what did he? Hold on.
Oh, I wasn't just rambling. Oh, good.
Yeah, 15. Let me go back another 15 seconds. Hold up. Write that down. Write that down. Uh, no, I'm good. I'm good.
Perfect.
Do we just want to go right into GameStop?
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about old GameStop.
My gosh.
Is GameStop the new G2A? It certainly does seem that way right now, as this last week it was discovered that that the fading retail giant sold an unlicensed game on their incredibly controversial NFT marketplace. This comes on the heels of just another controversy that is going to be added to the pile, including the 9/11 lookalike photo that started outrage just 2 weeks ago. So 2 controversies in just as many weeks, not looking great. The listing on the marketplace was called Nifty. Yeah, Nifty Arcade with NFT all capitalized. The Nifty Arcade collection, which instead of offering an overglorified image file, it offered you a quote interactive NFT. Yeah. And I'm sorry. The interactive NFT, which it's, by the way, it's linked to the HTML5 games that can be played from your crypto wallet or GameStop marketplace. And as you can guess from my not so hyperbolic introduction to the story, there was an issue with the legitimacy of those files, specifically in the fact that the NFTs were minted and sold without the permissions of the game's creators, and no compensation was given to them for any sale that was made.
FNFTs.
Yeah. Yeah. Bar right there.
The seller, Nathan, I'm gonna go with Ello. Nathan Ello,
Hello,
ELLO.
hello, hello. A.
No.
No? Okay.
I can't kick
Um,
him from the call either. I'm trying.
yeah, the seller has been suspended from selling on GameStop's marketplace, but according to Ars Technica, he is still holding on to tens of thousands of dollars that he made selling NFTs before he got caught. And as a final
Sick.
kick in Lady Justice's ass, the games are still accessible on GameStop's servers and file distribution systems, probably never to be removed. Um, According to Ello, he believed he was able to mint these NFTs through the Creative Commons and open source licensing agreements that they would be approved for commercial use, but evidently that was a mistake with at least two of the games, uh, Worm Nom Nom and Super Disc Box, which were listed with non-commercial licenses. And he claims it was this incident was an honest mistake, which you can choose to believe him or not. I'm personally not going to say either way. I don't understand. I don't understand the licensing behind these kinds of things at the moment because I haven't dug that deep into it. But yeah, if the games were listed as not for commercial use but open source, then yeah, he's definitely in the wrong. Do you guys want to take a second to comment on that at all? Thurston? Anybody?
I just saw that at the same point the meme stock of GameStop is back on the rise along with AMC, and I was just like, oh, that's a horrible coincidence that this company is like getting their stock price going up at the same time that this is happening. Oh, also,
Good.
Bed Bath and Beyond entered the melee, so to speak, because now they're getting like weird stocks too, and I'm just like, I always kind of wonder with stupidity like that, because it's just like it's all fake money anyways, yay. And then to see NFTs just like ripping people off and screwing over artists and creators just boils my blood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like very much want to know like what was going through his mind when he wanted to do this, because he said basically he's like, why in like his explanation for wanting to like add games as NFTs was that he wanted interactivity and like people to be able to play games and have access to games in their wallets. But
Yeah.
like I don't understand why use someone else's games unless you're just grifting, right? Like
Yeah.
The grifter archetype is a powerful archetype. It grants
It
you a lot
is.
of statistical bonuses, gets you a lot of money, and hopefully gets you some damn prison time, because that shit is, yeah.
yeah.
But the thing that you need for that archetype though, Thurston, is a pretty decent charisma score to pass all the checks that come with that. And
Mhm.
GameStop is just so unceremoniously the opposite of that. They are the bumps on the underside of a log, the ones that you would rather never see or interact with. But it's really hard to do that when they keep rolling themselves over and then making sure that you trip over them. Like with everything that they've been doing ever since I was young. And they're like, "We'll give you 2 cents for this game," and I'm like, nah. It's man, fuck this company, man, for real. Like, I
Yep.
can't hold it in anymore, man.
Yeah, Green, do you have any thoughts or opinions you want to share here?
I just, it, I cannot fathom the idea of these companies going to NFTs, other than that they're trying very, very, very hard to stay relevant, and that's
Yeah.
really like the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Is like GameStop is holding by a thread. If that thread was like in a tube, about 50 miles under the surface. Like they're trying so hard to like hold on. Like it sucks. It just sucks. This whole NFT thing is crazy.
Yeah.
It's gotten a little out of hand, and it's kind of tiring. I'm tired of seeing it.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was
I think
over, but it
everyone
just
is.
keeps coming back.
Yeah. And I mean, my final thoughts really on this, and this is, I'm going to kind of switch gears here from blaming the NFT creators a little bit, even though they do share a lot of the blame here. But I think really the main issue is how GameStop is curating this marketplace and preventing like the lack of, right? Like we talked about it with the W2 report just like 2 weeks ago. It's like, who is curating this marketplace to make sure that everything is above board, that it's not stolen art, that it's not stolen content, that the content is appropriate for their brand to be associated with. Right? It just really feels like whether or not Elo was being intentional with their piracy, it was certainly a violation of American intellectual property laws. And you would think that GameStop wouldn't want to be found liable for that. So where is the policing? Where is the verification on GameStop's part so this doesn't happen?
We're in the find out phase of unregulated.
Yeah.
Yep. Wild West.
Like it's this is the thing that people keep going for, is like, oh, unregulated's great until it's not.
Yeah, yeah. But the invisible hand, though.
Yeah, the people will make it work, and people are terrible.
Yeah, weird.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think we need to like turn a little bit of our eyes towards GameStop and these other marketplaces for ensuring like people are obeying intellectual property rights, especially because one of the like biggest thorns in my crotch right now is NFT bros who are like, you can't just right click and save, that's theft. But like there's a 1,000,001 NFTs out there that are stolen property. So right, so it's like, are NFTs property, or is art property? Which art and content is certainly property. It is intellectual property. You can't have them both. You can't
Would you right click and save a car?
Yes.
but right, like you can't have it like one way and not the other, right? If an NFT, if you buy an NFT and then it's therefore yours, you also can't buy a stolen piece of content as an NFT and think that there's nothing wrong with that, right? You can't like.
That's adorable. I mean, people will think whatever they mentally gymnastic justify.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
But,
yeah, and the springboard's there, and people will jump.
True. I have seen some gold medalists in the mental gymnastics lately. But I'm gonna go around the table one more time. Just like any other final thoughts on this GameStop selling stolen games ordeal. I also want to start a petition that starts calling GameStop G2A2. But
That's good. That's solid.
Thurston, we're gonna go to
just
you.
hurts my soul a bit just to remember G2A2 even.
But Thurston, any other final thoughts that you want to share here?
Oh, on that particular topic, nope. I think I've said my thoughts on NFTs and how they can go in a dumpster fire and die, and like I have, we've even seen them starting to pop up in the TTRPG sphere, and I'm just like, no, thank you.
Wait,
Please.
how is it just like TTRPG like related like images?
Oh yeah, well, images, but like the concept of like doing it with like organized play and with like characters. Like imagine your character is an NFT, and the idea that you could like that you could be playing in like a shared world, and then you could sell your character, which like through the blockchain and all of that. It is mind blowing. Now to be fair, I've been in TTRPGs like long enough that like organized play where it's basically like the honor system and you get like a stack of papers to prove you've played these games. And even in that situation, we had people who would be photocopying like these paper sheets called boons that we would give out at conventions and stuff. We had one fellow known as the Boon Baron who would literally photocopy sheets from Gen Con and sell them on eBay for $50 a pop. So again, there are just people out there who will do this stuff, and they are the scummiest of the scum.
Can
Yeah,
I
it's
can I get an
weird.
illustration of the Boon Baron?
The Boon Baron.
Ooh.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
taking
It
all
was
of his Pathfinder Society stickers and slapping them on, like, he's just peeling one off, throwing it on one, folding it into an envelope and mailing it out, and taking another Pathfinder
and you
Society
laugh, but in order to catch the guy, what we had to do was we were 90% sure of who it was. So what we did was we made a special copy of a boon that had a slight like spelling error or like indentation on a word that was on no other copy, and we handed it to this person. And when those showed up on eBay, that's when we had them. And it was like the fact we had to even do that sounds so dumb in retrospect.
You did FBI level
Like,
shit
level-
to find
Oh,
the
God.
counterfeiter.
Yeah,
That's
the
what I
guy
was
who's
saying.
photocopying pieces of paper for make-believe characters. My God.
Oh, the humanity.
Yeah.
It's not easy out here for a pirate, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Have you seen rent prices? Gotta photocopy more sheets of paper if I'm gonna eat.
I was gonna say, Thug Life chose that guy.
Yeah, truth.
Green, do you have any other thoughts on this GameStop situation?
No, sir, not for me.
Mendacii, how about you?
Really just two things. I just find it funny, I just think that it's funny that every time some NFT person gets in trouble or something gets in trouble having to do with NFTs, it's literally just you could put it in quotes and add like a TM circle trademark symbol on it, an honest mistake. Not by the bravery, not that one hit wonder from like 2007, but a true honest mistake trademarked. Yeah, it's ridiculous every time, and then it gets swept up, and we don't talk about it until the next one pops up. Which right now they're pretty much a dime a dozen. All of these situations. But my last 2 cents. I would like to ask Thurston, can you say Super Disc Box 5 times very fast?
Super disc box, 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 super disc box. There we go.
Oh, I got one. All right, perfect.
And clipping that.
Yeah. My proudest moment. Very good. Got him.
Well, I think if that's all of our opinions, I think we can wrap up the show then.
Perfect.
Well, thank you guys for having me on
Yeah.
the fabulous, proud, bearded men podcast.
We're doing a name change. It's a brand change.
Yeah, there we go.
Change everything.
I got Green, I got your back.
We got a unfortunately, Green.
Stop.
If you can't grow a beard, we'll have to let you go from the show. But
Okay.
Secretly,
all right.
I've turned against him. Oh no!
I'm just gonna like photocopy like pictures of beards, then just like cut them
Okay.
out and put them in there.
I could
Yeah.
mail you some of mine from my beard.
Oh, this
Question mark.
podcast got weird fast.
Yeah, that got real weird. Anyways, Thurston, for the folks who might have joined us halfway through and missed your introduction, who are you? What do you do? Where can people find you? And like, what's the next big thing for you?
Yeah. Okay. So, hi, Thurston Hillman. I am the managing creative director for the StarFinder role-playing game. You can find me on all the things at On Call GM, Twitter. Sometimes I stream when I find time, and then also I GM for a little show called Narrative Declaration. We are a Twitch stream, YouTube recast, TTRPG show playing Pathfinder Second Edition. You can find that at Narrative Declaration. As for me, and my professionalism, aside from Narrative Declaration, you can find every second Saturday. So not this Saturday, but next Saturday. Otherwise, I just announced the adventure path I'm working on, which I'm actually just wrapping up, oddly, which is always fun when it's like, we announced the thing. I'm literally just handing it off to editors and art. The Scoured Stars adventure path, which is a StarFinder adventure path for 1st to 15th level. It's going to be releasing sometime in the new year. It is a 256-page hardback adventure that takes you from 1st to 15th level and is our first effort at milestone leveling, which is super cool. So if you want to basically power level your party through basically a level a night of gaming, you can basically get from 1st to 15th level, run a whole TTRPG campaign in 70 hours. That's coming out next year, and that's kind of my cool baby that I'm looking forward to. And yeah, you'll also hear more from me on my socials. So
Excellent. And don't forget, guys, if you want to check out Thurston, we will have links in this episode description on YouTube and on the podcast platforms for easy access. So go check him out there. Check out all that stuff there. Green, what's coming up on your channel?
I am gonna be playing a plethora of games, including Star Citizen, Escape from Tarkov, and Hunt Showdown. I've kind of put those three in like a weekly rotation. I'm not gonna be able to tell you what days are gonna be which because I don't know that myself. I'm just gonna play what I want to play. But you can catch that on twitch.tv/Mr. Green Elite. And all my socials are TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, all the fancy things. So hopefully I will see you there.
Mendacii, what's coming up on your channel?
Hey yo, hopefully we'll be getting into that tech test for Darktide on Friday. So if you like Warhammer, if you like sci-fi RPGs already, hopefully I'll have something to show you on Friday. If not, we'll probably be going into the sci-fi horror side of things with some more Aliens Fireteam Elite. We've got the Pathogen update coming up soon, and it's just been a really big blast to play. Otherwise, yeah, just lots of co-op games as per usual, and likely some other survival horror things to take a peek at over at my podcast for two people Twitch, which is PFTP_plays, where you can watch both Brent and myself play through some survival horror games since we're just kicking off spooky season right the heck now. So he's going through the Resident Evil 1 remake, where I'm going through Dead Space, and then we are playing Resident Evil 5 together. On my channel, we always have a community slot open for anyone that's interested. So go ahead, check that out over at twitch.tv/Mendacii, MENDACII. Otherwise, hit me up on Twitter. See what I'm playing. Ask me to play with you to do something. I'll probably say yeah. That's at only Mendacii.
Excellent. Coming up on my channel, no regular streams this week. I am getting ready to go over to Seattle this Saturday, so no regular streams, but Friday, and I'm a little sad. My boys here forgot to mention, but we have.
It popped up into my head, and I'm like, aren't we doing something on Friday?
We are doing our session 0 for our own tabletop roleplay adventure this Friday at 7 p.m. It's got Mendacii, it's got Green Elite, it's got Indie Falco 64, Quasar.exe, and Zombie Potion. We're I think we've teased some stuff out, but I'm gonna leave it like the setting a little bit of a mystery for you guys. You have to come check it out on Friday evening, this Friday, like August 12th, on my channel, and then we have more announcements coming very soon about that.
What about a little tantalizing teaser? If you're a fan of anime,
Yes.
if you're a fan of digital things, video games, and anime,
yeah,
video things,
Yes.
video things,
and
just
and
really
these nuts
excited.
jokes.
It's really good. Yeah.
I'm really excited also how you're gonna use a Jenga tower for this game.
We
I can't
have-
wait to see it.
We have one person who is only allowed to say "these nuts" one time in the entire campaign. Just a heads up.
My.
Just a heads
It will
up.
pop out somewhere.
Yeah. So yeah, that is this Friday. That is this Friday. So be sure to hang out with us. Otherwise, follow me on Twitter at DaniCae, DANIECAE. Enjoy my shit posts there. Otherwise, thanks for watching and listening to the show. That's going to wrap us up for the week. We appreciate you guys for watching and listening. If you missed any part of the show, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and everywhere podcasts are found. Don't forget our question of the week. This week is, what is your favorite sci-fi setting? You can answer that question on YouTube and Spotify, as well as tweet at us. Green Elite, hit him with that Twitter.
At Next to Nothing PC.
If you like what we do and want to help support the show, you can drop a like on this video or subscribe. Always drop a comment. That always helps us out as well. It gives us a lot of good vibes to feed into the YouTube algorithm. Other than that, guys, stay safe, stay healthy, keep fighting the good fights, and we will talk to you again next week. Goodbye.
Yada yada.
I love you.
Oh, I don't. Oh.
Oh, my.